My name is Jake Purches, or Yaqub. They call me Yaqub in the masjid, and which is Arabic version of my name, which is Jacob. I'm 45 years old. I've been a Muslim for 10 years, so I was 35 when I reverted to Islam. And I reverted thanks to my wife, who, although she wasn't my wife at the time, but she introduced me to Islam, this sister, and then of course we got married. I've been in Worthing, this town, for well, really the last 30 odd years of my life, I suppose. A bit more than that, actually. But I was born and raised in London, so I still think of myself as a London boy. But in reality is actually I spent more time here. Yeah. So, and I grew up in what would, I suppose, some would call a relatively middle-class bohemian background. Both my parents were artists, or are artists. They're still alive, obviously. They're not. They're still practicing. So a somewhat, although it felt normal to me at the time, I guess other people might view it as being a little unconventional. In other words, I don't have the regular kind of bank manager father or anything like that. In terms of religious background, of course I was raised in the Church of England. That's my background. And both my parents, my father's father, my grandfather, was a parish priest, and my grandmother from my mother's side was set to be ordained as a vicar as well, before he passed away. On the other side of the family, we have a somewhat military background on my father's side. And on my mother's side, it's what they'd call trade. In other words, it was my grandfather was very much involved in insurance and engineering. The first thing I learned about or heard about Muslims, it's hard to say, because I often wonder whether there was any subliminal effect on my childhood, because at the time, especially in London, we heard more about the IRA, and that was quite in. But also we heard a lot about Palestinian liberation, the PLO. But I didn't really know they were Muslims. I just knew they were Arabs. Growing up in London, we grew up predominantly with West Indian people and Sikhs. So I really am stretching myself to try and remember any Muslims as such. So I think they were almost non-existent in my early childhood, from 10. Now, from after about 10 or 11, round about 1979, there was the Islamic Revolution. Ayatollah Khomeini came into Iran, and that was portrayed by the news as being very negative. It's only later on have I tried to get a better grasp of what was going on at the time, but I think that was the stereotypical image of Muslims that we had at the time. So I think most of my initial impressions were not particularly good. I think that's quite normal. Things started getting more interesting when I was a little older, about 18, 19, when I had my first, I had a trip to Egypt, and I went with my parents and some friends. And I remember quite clearly being quite impressed with the masjids, the mosques in Egypt, particularly in Cairo, and the call to prayer, because the Egyptian muezzin is very distinctive. It's a beautiful sound. And I subsequently had a second trip a year later, and I think these little influences crept into my head. But I think Islam at the time, and still is to some extent, still seen as a foreign religion. It's not really seen as something for everybody, and I think that's the way it's portrayed, the way it's sold, the way, it's not the PR machine on Islam is pretty poor. in some respects, and so I think it's quite normal for one to have to not be exposed to anything positive about Islam. I think it was only really after I was married previously, but after that was finished and I met a lady from Indonesia, she informed me about 3 or 4 weeks after chatting by email that she was a Muslim. And because we'd already started off with the intention of marriage, there wasn't really any ambiguity on that one. She said, "Do you realise I'm a Muslim? You need to know I'm a Muslim." And I said, "Right." And she said, "Well, if we're to get married, you need to be a Muslim too." "Oh," I said, that could be a problem, I'm not sure how I can be a Muslim. Aren't Muslims terrorists? I mean, this is the idea that I had in my head. And of course, about 3 months after that, there was 9/11, so this is really not a good time to be a Muslim. In fact, actually, I'd taken my Shahada about 2 weeks before 9/11. I think it was something like that. It was a few weeks before. So I thought, what am I doing, And that's, and I thought, I've got to keep this quiet.
My name is Sri Raharti Hadiningrum, but all my friends call me Nining for short. I was a journalist at that time, and as a journalist, your life basically just busy. I don't think about anything else. I just want to have a good career. I worked with the political/law magazine at that time. He seems that he, very interested in me, and I said to him, in Islam, as a woman, I cannot marry somebody not a Muslim. So from the beginning, I have already said that. That's basically we start, and after that, he start asking me quite a lot of questions about Islam, which is some I can, the basic one I can answer, but sometimes he asks me questions that really fundamental, really philosophical things, which is I'm not that capable to answer. So I have to go to my uncle and ask him, with the, all the proof and everything, so I can answer his question. And then he asked me to meet me. And I said, okay, if you want to meet me, come to Indonesia. So he went to Indonesia, see me and see my family. And at that time, he has already said that, I'm really serious. I'm really serious. So I took him to my uncle to, because I haven't got any father anymore. So my mom said, when I have to talk about this. When I said to my mom that this boy from England want to marry me, my mom was a bit worried, of course, How can you be serious? He's a man from Western, want to marry you. And are you sure he's serious? I don't want you to become a doormat. That's what my mom said, Okay, then I said, Inshallah, we just pray to Allah. I said, you pray, I pray. We do tahajjud together and ask Allah to give us a sign. If he meant to be my husband, everything's going to be smooth and all right. So he came to Indonesia, meet me and my mom, and I took him to my uncle's. And because my mom said, if your uncle said yes, go ahead. You have my blessing. Because my uncle, he's an imam and also he's a psychiater. So he can see people through, And so I took him, and then they have discussion and conversation, and my cousin as well also, asking a lot of questions. At that time, I don't want to hear anything. I just hide in the kitchen.
So her uncle had to vet me, make sure I was a good guy, and he came up to me and said, "Do you believe in God?" And I went, yes. Oh, good. So off he went. And then his daughters proceeded to grill me and ask me all kinds of pertinent questions. After I came out of that in one piece, you know, I basically got permission, you know.
So, and when we finished the conversation the next day, I rang my uncles. How do you think about him? My uncle said, fine, go ahead.
I was there for a couple of weeks, but when I came back to England, then Ninning came to see me, to see my family. I thought it was quite normal for her to come and stay in my house, you see. And she said to me, I can't stay here until we get married. What are you talking about? And I said, no, I can't stay in your house until we get married. So I said, well, what do we do? Well, we have to get married, she said. So you have to marry me. I said, well, how do I do that? So I said, we have to find a mosque, you know, and you have to take shahada, and so this is all very confusing to me. And I went, okay. So we telephoned around, and this is where Bijam, my Iranian friend, said there's a mosque in Brighton. He didn't know there was one in Worthing either, but there was one in Brighton, and so we booked up the next day or the day after, I think. And the imam there, Julie, took my shahada and then married us 5 minutes later. So that's how I became Muslim. Lenticular 3D designer. Before that I was a photographer, before that I was a filmmaker, but I've been doing this particular work, 3D printing, for about 12 years, and I've been in this studio for about 5 years. But I started that before I became Muslim. I've been Muslim now for 10 years, so I was doing this before I converted to Islam. Right, since I've been a Muslim, I've been a little more careful about the kind of work that I take on. Right, I mean sometimes, especially with advertising, sometimes things can be a little bit risque, you know. And whilst I have some, you have to have some tolerance on it, but I have actually turned down work now, which I don't consider to be halal, you know. If anything is blatantly haram, I don't want to do it anymore. So unfortunately, it loses jobs, but at the same time, I have to kind of square up what I do is, you know, whether it's right or not. That's the only thing. So that's what basically changed. Alhamdulillah, you know, there's not been too many situations where I've had to turn down work. So maybe Allah's given me decent work, you know, stuff that I'm comfortable with. But occasionally, I still do get the odd one which I'm not comfortable with. But if it's outright, you know, like nudity or anything like that, I don't do it. But beforehand, I would have quite happily done it. You know, so that's changed. I've been more choosy now since becoming Muslim as to what I do. There we go. And that's the finished article. You'll see one flip will say Allah, and the other we should say Muhammad. We're in the south of England, West Sussex. It's we're actually just outside a town called Littlehampton, and we're about 10 minutes drive, 15 minutes drive from Chichester, and about 40 minutes drive from Brighton. But we're on the south coast. There are Muslims all around this area, but they're spread out. And the main centre of focus is Worthing Mosque, or Worthing Masjid, which you prefer to call it. And that has a catchment of going as far as Chichester and as far as the tip of just about into Brighton as well. So, and Horsham. So we probably catch quite a lot of people from 20-mile radius. Majority of Muslims live in town though, which is quite normal. And we have quite a big Bangladeshi community. It's and Syrian and a few Saudis. You know, we have people from all over the world really. And of course we have quite a few English brothers and sisters, mainly sisters. When I came into Worthing, I was already living in Worthing, so when I joined Worthing Mosque and was introduced to the brothers there, I was met with a very warm welcome. Very warm welcome, really. An amazing sense of happiness when you come along, actually, and they discover you're new and you've just reverted to Islam. They're very happy to, brothers very happy to see that. And the number of hugs and kisses you get is quite amazing, really. It doesn't happen so much now. It's probably because I've been a Muslim for 10 years. They treat me as an older Muslim now. I'm probably one of the uncles. But I certainly remember my first trip to one of the masjids in Leicester was amazing. Really, nobody knew me there, but as soon as they saw me and they knew I'd just reverted, they were all over me. It was great. Really lovely experience. We're going to Worthing Mosque, where it'll soon be time for Maghrib prayer. Afterwards, I'm going to introduce you to Imam Idris. He's the Imam of the masjid, and he will. We'll see him in his office afterwards. Sorry. We're here now in Worthing Mosque, and this is our local Islamic centre. We have a madrasa upstairs. I come here as often as I can. If I'm in town, I'll come here for praying whenever I can. There's 5 times Salah here every day, so from Fajr to Isha.
Welcome, Sam.
How are you?
Hi, Yaqub, you okay?
Thank you. Yeah,
Take a seat.
Yeah, thank you.
How's everything? How was your Eid?
Eid's very good. Yeah, we even got some meat.
That's good. Were you in Worthing or did you go somewhere?
No, we stayed in
I've known Yaqub now for 5 years actually, since I came to Worthing, because Yaqub is actually a member of the committee as well. So he was actually one of the very first people that I met. We have approximately 1,000 Muslims in Worthing, and we are very fortunate that we have about 30 to 40 people who have converted to Islam. We look at the people who have converted to Islam or reverted to Islam with a lot of admiration. First of all, because of the virtues that they have, in the sense that when a person enters the fold of Islam, then all their sins are forgiven, and it is like a newborn baby coming into the world. And also at the same time, it is because they are Muslims by choice, and we are Muslims by chance to a certain extent. So because we are just Muslims by chance, if we were born in some other faith, who knows whether we would have accepted the faith or not. But because when somebody is Muslim by choice, then obviously we have a lot of admiration for that. And I think the whole community are very happy, very proud of the people who have converted into Islam and who have reverted into the fold of Islam.
In many cases, Indonesian women married Westerners, and yeah, they married Islamically, and after they married their husbands back to their old lifestyle. And what I believe is we cannot force religions to somebody. I cannot just force him, after Shahadat, you have to pray 5 times a day, you have to fasting, you have to do this, you have to do that. In the limited times, I can't do that. I want to give him space to learn about Islam properly, and I want him to do all this obligation because he wants to do it, not because I want him to do it for the sake of my family, you know. What I did is I just do my pray, I just do my obligation as a Muslim. I deliberately pray in front of him, you know. When Ramadan, I'm fasting, and I said to him, what would you like to try? You know, because it's, you know, his first Ramadan. Don't worry if you can't fast until Maghrib, you know, just try as long as you want. And then, so basically I just show him this is Islam.
I can't remember exactly when, but I don't think we've been married more than a month, when I had a kind of peculiar experience, should we say, and which was really going to change my mind, you know, change my ways to make me more committed. And it happened in a dream. So I had a very strange dream, and I remember quite clearly, and it was only a very short dream, but I suddenly found myself in a desert. And I remember the sky was very intense blue, you know, the sun was at the zenith, and it was very, very, very hot. And there, standing in front of me, was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And people say, well, how do you know it was him? But it just felt like it was him, right? So that's all I can say. He didn't actually say he was the Prophet, but I mean, you know, you just knew it was, you know, it's just one of those things. And he held out his hand to me and said, "You come to me," like that. And I just remember going towards him and then waking up. And it was a dream, like I'm seeing you. You know, it wasn't a fuzzy dream. It was a crystal clear dream, right? So I woke up in a bit of a panic, and I told my wife that I had a very strange dream. I'm not sure what it was about, but I think I met the Prophet, and she said, Alhamdulillah, and I just didn't really take any notice of it at the time. It was a strong dream, and I thought it's just a dream. So I just carry on as normal. So I kind of didn't really do anything special after that. You know, maybe I prayed and things, but exactly a week later, I had exactly the same dream, but this time it was even stronger. It says, "You must come to me," like that. And then when I woke up, I went, okay, I got the message. You know, that's how it felt like. I got the message. And from then on, I pray 5 times a day without fail, and have done for the last, you know, for the next 10 years, you know. And so that's what committed me to being a practicing Muslim. It's as if Allah was giving me a kick, you know, saying, look, this is for you, this is why you're here. You know, just like a reminder, you know. I'm not saying I'm a good Muslim. I'm not saying I'm the world's greatest Muslim by a long shot. I mean, there's plenty of things that it's like a big mountain to climb, you know. And I'm only on the base camp, you know. Maybe it's starting a bit further up the hill, but I realise, you know, to get to the top is probably impossible. But there are some people who achieve it, and they're very admirable. But I try and do the fard, you know, what's required of me every day. I try and do interweave it or interlace it with my everyday life.